Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air global network with more than 4 million listeners. I am your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Deanna Raybourn. Deanna is the New York Times best-selling and Edgar Award nominated author of the Veronica Speedwell Mysteries, the Lady Julia Gray series, and several standalone novels, including Killers of a Certain Age and Kills Well with Others. She lives in Virginia with her family. Welcome, Deanna.
Thanks for having me.
So fun. So I discovered Deanna from her Book of the Month Club book, Killers of a Certain Age, which is a hilarious novel about, women kind of my age who are, assassins and being hunted. And that was such a fun read. So when I heard from your publisher that you have a new book out, I was like, oh, I would love to have her on the show. And I had no idea how prolific and how many fabulous books you have. So the book I got to read, and I have the gorgeous cover. So if you're not watching us, you got to go check out Deanna's A Ghastly Catastrophe, which is
Aren't they beautiful? I'm so lucky with these covers.
the cover is phenomenal. And I did see
Mhm.
that across the series, your covers have been phenomenal. So
I am spoiled rotten by that art department at
I love
Berkeley.
that.
Let me
Well,
tell you.
as we should all be. There's so few opportunities to be spoiled rotten as an author, so I think you take it. But these are the Veronica Speedwell mysteries. So tell our listeners about this series because it's so much fun.
So, A Ghastly Catastrophe is book number 10. We've been at this series for a decade now, and it follows the adventures of Veronica Speedwell, who is our sleuth. She's an amateur because her day job is lepidopterist. She's a butterfly hunter, and she has a super hot sidekick. Um, who is an aristocratic black sheep of the family, who is also a natural historian. And so they spend their time stumbling over dead bodies, as you do,
As you do.
as you
It
do.
is, yeah, so much fun. So in this particular story, tell us a little bit about the sort of the a hint of the plot of this one because it's so much fun.
Well, this one, every book I like to kind of play with a little question.
Yeah.
And this one was, what if they met someone who might be a vampire? And so, they have to go investigate whether or not this particular guy who is presenting himself as this very enigmatic, kind of Byron-esque figure, they have to go figure out whether he has supernatural powers or not. And Veronica, she's a scientist, but oh God, she really wants to believe.
Yes.
She loves that idea. And Stoker, who is her sidekick, he is her love interest, and they have a very modern
They
relationship.
do.
And
I love their relationship. I'm like,
they
I
are,
want a Stoker. Doesn't every
oh
woman
my
deserve a
God, shouldn't
Stoker?
everybody have a Stoker? Um, he is absolutely not having it. And the great part is they are wildly inconsistent because he insists on believing in this creature called a Volpertinger, which is, like part rabbit and part, it's got antlers, and it's like the German equivalent of a jackalope. And he insists on believing that those are real, but he will not stand for any suggestion of vampires. And Veronica's like, but do we know?
And I love
And
that his
so
name is Stoker. That the fact that that hadn't come up like in the first nine, that you have this opportunity with his name to play with the whole, or did it? Has it come up before the whole?
No, 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 no. This is literally the first time I've been able to play with it. Stoker is a nickname because his given name is Revelstoke. And so there is a little author's note at the beginning of this book
Yeah, I
where
read that. Yeah.
Veronica is explaining, I don't know who this Bram Stoker person is, but he's stolen some stuff from me. I just need you to know it. And so if you've ever read Dracula, there are a whole bunch of jokes in the book, like with regard to characters' names and things like that, where you could say, "Oh, Bram Stoker stole that clearly from Veronica.
I mean
What an ass."
I love how this book is so, and I found that with your writing in the first book I read of yours too. It's just so playful, but the banter between these two characters is like laugh out loud. You just really are like, and they are so quick, and then the cast of characters around them, are so much fun. It is. God, I just what a so tell me what is it like to yeah, what's it like to write these books? I mean, you must have
It's
it seems like you're
fun.
in love. Yeah.
It's fun. It's just straight up fun. But then I won't write a book if I can't have fun with it. That's just, if I'm not going to enjoy what I'm doing, then I'm not going to write it. So if I have a subplot, like the one before this, the book was called A Grave Robbery, and the subplot had to do with what are called anatomical beauties. They were these gorgeous wax models of women that were used for anatomical study, starting in like the 17th century and then going on. That was a subject that I thought was interesting to geek out about. So I read up on it and I had the best time going down rabbit holes and I stuck it in the book. So I
Yeah.
I always do that. I will make sure that whatever the subplot is, it's something that I think is interesting to explore. And I did have a standalone novel years and years and years ago called The Dead Travel Fast, that was my homage to the Gothic novel. Because I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, like I cut my teeth on Victoria Holt.
Oh
Like
yeah.
that was it. I loved me some Gothic. And, in Victoria Holt's books, the question was always, is he a good man or is he a bad man? And so in The Dead Travel Fast, I thought, okay, well, the question is going to be, is he a human man? And so I got to play with the idea of vampires. And that was, like I said, a really long time ago. So I thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun to bring a vampire element to Veronica's books and give her one book to play around with the idea of the idea of vampires and the folklore that goes with them, because the folklore around them is fascinating. And the more you read, the more you find that that folklore is not dead.
Yeah.
There are still cases as recent as, I think 2018, 2019, where villagers in really remote parts of the Carpathians are digging folks up saying, we just want to make sure. Are you dead? We just want to make sure.
I mean, so and like the details about like as you said, she's a butterfly hunter. The
Mhm.
the beautiful like woven in details about the place that the manor where they live and the and her butterflies and certain butterflies and you just like it's just like you really do feel like you're in another world where you are you're in that learning immersed. You must do. I mean, you must be now a butterfly expert, I would imagine. I mean, really.
Um, I'm not, but I do enjoy them. I think they're beautiful, and I love to visit. If you're in a city that has a vivarium, that is just the most extraordinary experience to go and just have them swarming all around you. I've been able to do that a couple of times. I also raised a group of butterflies when I was doing my first Veronica book. You can buy these kits, and they will send you a chrysalis, and they're painted ladies, and they send you the little habitat, and you hook them up in there, and they just do their thing. And then after so many days, they will emerge from the chrysalis, and they're these beautiful butterflies, and you can set them free. And it's awesome. And you learn so much when you actually do those little things. Like I learned butterflies smell like ass. Like they just smell terrible when they're going through that transformation
Interesting.
from caterpillar to butterfly and they're in the chrysalis. The smell is just appalling. And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so I put the habitat in my kitchen, and my poor husband was like, do we have to really? This
Yeah.
is where the butterflies are going to live. And so it was actually a really happy day when we let the butterflies
I would
go.
imagine. I would
Oh
imagine.
my God.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
there's a substance they secrete called frass, and it is just foul. It's
that's
so
so fun.
foul.
Well, I would. I mean, it seems to me that it should smell funky to recreate yourself, like whatever you
Right?
go through,
Makes
right?
perfect
Shouldn't be,
sense.
yeah, exactly. Shouldn't be all.
You're
And
destroying and rebuilding. And then,
yes.
through some of my other research, I found out that there are butterflies that are carnivores, which I had no idea.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
had no idea that there were butterflies that would hang out on carrion. And I was like, there's something so amazing about that image of these beautiful, delicate, jewel-like creatures, you know, basically doing the same thing vultures do. Like they're just going to hang out on dead meat. And it's like, I love that juxtaposition.
Well, it's interesting to me, like if you're 10 books into this, like there was it's we make these sort of a little bit random decisions when we start books, I feel like, about like what's the character's job going to
Hmm.
be and what's her name or who's around her. And I think, then you discover, and I've only my longest series is 5 books, but you
Mm.
discover like, oh God, I'm really stuck with this. So you
Yeah.
have had to, I mean, you have been digging into this world. What started it? Why, like, because also he's like, his fascination fascination with taxidermy.
Mhm.
And like, was that sort of, it seems a little bit, was it random in the beginning?
No, no, no. It was actually very, very deliberate. So when I got my degree, which was in English and history, like a million years ago, I went to a university in Texas that had a smaller history program. So I didn't really get to study what I wanted. It was a whole bunch of like white European dudes doing war, and so I was pretty bored with that by the time I got my degree. So I went off to go read and figure out what rabbit holes can I go down of things that I'm actually interested in history. And one of the things I was fascinated by were these Victorian female explorers. And I ran across the memoirs of one of these women because Victorian women would just pack up and go. And sometimes they did it because they were interested in botany or they might be interested in anthropology or mountaineering. Sometimes they just wanted to see places. But one of the most fascinating of these women was actually a butterfly hunter. And so I thought, if I ever have the opportunity to write another, because this was back when I was writing my first Victorian series. And I thought if I ever have an opportunity to write another Victorian series, I want to pay homage to Margaret Fountain, who is this lepidopterist. And Margaret was amazing. She earned a living for herself as a butterfly hunter because middle class Victorians were like trying to present themselves as being very well educated and they were fascinated by the natural world. And they would order butterfly specimens that were to them very exotic if they're living in England. They wanted a gorgeous blue morpho to put in a case. Well, if you're out hunting butterflies, you could net one of those and sell it for maybe 3 guineas.
Right.
Well, 30 butterflies a year and you've got a living wage at a very comfortable level. And so Margaret went out and butterfly hunted around the world. She did it for like 6 decades. She died with her butterfly net in her hand. And when you read her journals, you realize that Margaret wasn't just collecting butterflies, she was collecting dudes all over the world. She was having, she had premarital sex, she had interracial sex, she had experiences you do not think that the typical Victorian woman is going to have. Margaret had them and Margaret wrote about them. And I was so tickled by her because she was just, everything about her was unexpected, totally unexpected. I loved her. And when I tried to figure out what sort of companion she should have, what should her sidekick be like, it was a no-brainer to me that he should have um, as much of a fascination with natural history as she did.
Mhm.
And I was inspired by a couple of different men, Roy Chapman Andrews, Carl Akeley. If you have ever been to New York City and you've been to the Natural History Museum, there's the Akeley Hall of Mammals. It's named for Carl Akeley. These were men who, in the early days of natural history, you would go out to a place, you would hunt the specimen yourself, you would field dress it, you would do the rudiments of taxidermy in the field, and then you would bring it back. Then you would completely create the atmosphere in which that trophy was placed. And you did it for educational purposes. So you could say to people, hey, look at this amazing thing that's out there. You need to know about it. You can see it up close. Don't go kill any more because I just killed this one for you. There are a whole lot of reasons why what they did is deeply problematic. And it also had the benefit of being extraordinarily eye-opening to a whole bunch of people because for a very, very tiny amount of money, you could go into these museums and you could see these things.
Right.
And so Carl Lakely had a couple of adventures which were just mind-blowing. And so I thought, yeah, that's the kind of person Stoker is. Stoker and Veronica both have come to terms with the fact that they don't want to go out and kill things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though that's happened earlier in their careers, they're like, we don't really have to do that anymore. And that's what you actually saw in the 1880s. You saw the very beginnings of the conservation movement. You saw people who said, you know what? Maybe we can educate people without necessarily killing more stuff. Maybe we should be protecting these things. Oh, you know what? If we're going to protect a species, maybe we should protect its environment at the same time. And so that's the very foundation of the conservation movement. And so, but it required the people who were going out and doing these things to kind of have those moments where they went, ooh, am I a bad guy? I
Yeah.
think I'm a bad guy. I need to change what I'm doing here. And so
I
Stoker and Veronica have both done that.
I love it. And actually, it's, when you go back to the idea that, Stoker doesn't, believe in, he's in the sort of extraordinary, the very, very ending, which we're not going to spoil, is so fun, right? Because it gives you this like sense of
Yeah,
like, oh, well, there's this thing. And I love that, I love their sort of gentle teasing about it. But I also, the idea that Victorian women, like this was also a way to avoid the sort of trap of, marriage and, wash and
absolutely.
laundry and,
Yeah,
cooking.
it was a way to stay independent. And the funny thing is too, the more you read about Victorian female explorers, the more you see how many of them had health problems when they were at home. Health problems that would disappear the second they set foot on a steamship or on a train and they got the hell out of Dodge. All of a sudden, I mean, Isabella Bird used to complain all the time. She had neuralgia, she had migraines, she had horrible back trouble. I'm sorry, how did she end up on a horse up a mountain?
Yeah, what do you think that
Yeah, I
is? Is that
mean, how do you do that?
psychosomatic? Is that stress? Is it
100%. 100%. It is, part of it is a learned helplessness. Part of it is an enforced powerlessness, and I think because you see how often these women are railroaded into being unpaid caregivers because a lot of these women who went exploring were spinsters, which, everybody in the family looks to the spinster aunt, the spinster sister, the spinster daughter to be the one to take care of someone who is, oh, your sister-in-law's recovering from childbirth. You need to go take care of her for 2 months. Oh, your father had a stroke. You need to go take care of him for the rest of his life. Oh, your brother's wife died. You need to go take care of all his babies.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
railroaded into these jobs that they don't want. They have minds and intellect and curiosity and will and energy and ambition. And I mean, my God, it's no wonder so many of them ended up locked up in asylums, crawling the walls,
Oh,
because
right.
it took so much courage to break free from that. And so the idea that you could just pack up your cold cream in your carpet bag with your spare petticoat and hit the road, that was so liberating for these women. But it really did entail, in a lot of cases, disappointing people
Of
and
course.
upsetting people and
Yeah.
making people angry.
And being a pariah in society in some ways, right? I mean,
Yeah.
she's very much Veronica's, there are certainly people who are judging her, but the other thing I love about her is her sensuality. She is like does not full like she does not, hold back on how she feel like their clearly wonderful romantic life is so fun because I feel like that's another thing that, women are we're still trying to be able to be honest about, how we feel about, I mean, about intimacy and sexuality, and we're not supposed to be the instigators. And yet, here's this woman in this time when she's just like, they have this clearly very satisfying love life, which is so fun.
Oh, she is not at all abashed or apologetic about her feelings, her needs, her desires. Veronica is a girl who goes on top. Like
I
she
love it.
is an instigator and an initiator. And I really wanted to change up. Again, that was an homage to Margaret Fountain.
Yeah.
But I knew if Veronica was going to be that sort of person, then I wanted Stoker to be the romantic one in the relationship. So he's the one who reads romance novels. He loves him some Keats. Like if they're going to have sexy times, Stoker's the one who's setting the mood, and Veronica's like, we're in a carriage. We got 10 minutes alone. Fine.
I know.
We can go at it.
It's always fun. I think it's so fun to read books where you play with the expectations.
Mhm.
Veronica is so, and both of them are so unexpected, as are the comrades,
Mhm.
JJ who shows up, and I'm not, there's a bunch of these characters in this book, and our vampire character, and all of these really interesting people that you populate this world with. So tell me this, are you somebody who sort of maps it all out? I mean, so many details, so many moving parts. Now you obviously know the basis of their world very well, but how do you write a new Veronica Speedwell novel?
Oh, Lord. It's hurting cats. It's absolutely hurting cats. I have a rotating cast of supporting characters. Stoker has three brothers who sometimes make appearances, sometimes don't. It just depends on the book. It depends on how long it's been since we've seen one of them because Stoker's oldest brother, Tiberius, has got a fan club. Like, I can't even talk to you about
I
how
love
people
him.
are
Yeah.
rabid about Tiberius. He is our chaotic bisexual Viscount, and everybody adores Tiberius. So even if I can't use him in a big way in a book, then I'll make sure he gets a scene.
Yeah.
So when I was trying to figure out how two characters were going to meet each other in this book, I was like, Tiberius is my man. He knows everybody. So I got to throw him into the mix this
Love it.
time. JJ Butterworth is a recurring character. She is very much a Nellie Bly. She's an investigative journalist who is extraordinarily unlucky. I love JJ. I love her so much, but I torture this girl as far as what she's able to do with her career. And then we have Mornaday, who works for Scotland Yard. And he is also kind of on the receiving end of terrible luck because Stoker and Veronica kind of create chaos wherever they go. And there's even a discussion in one of the books between Mornaday and JJ about how, these two people are they have such main character energy, and they are not the main characters of my life.
Yeah.
And yet they are. So when I start with a book, there's always the germ of the idea. There's the hook of what kind of a book is this going to be? And so this one, I knew I wanted to play with the idea of a vampire. And kind of, are we dealing with something supernatural? Are we not? I also liked the idea of bringing Mornaday in because there are things that Scotland Yard is trying to cover up, but Mornaday wants the truth. And he knows he can't investigate. So Stoker and Veronica, that's the first thing I've got to figure out is how are they brought into a case?
Right. Right.
How, who comes looking for them to say, hey, can you do this for us? The last book, they literally stumbled over a corpse. Stoker found one and it made him sick, poor baby. And Veronica was like, oh, we've got something to suss out now. This time, Mornaday comes calling and says, I've got a puzzle for you guys. JJ always inserts herself if she possibly can. We have drunk JJ this time because
Funny,
she's
yeah.
having an existential crisis.
She's just been
So
fired, right? Or, so she's like, yeah,
fired and evicted.
fired
So
and evicted.
I mean,
Yeah.
if she had a love life, she would have been broken up with at the same time. But JJ has no love life, God love her. So it's considering who's going to bring them into the case, what that entry point is going to be, and it's considering who's going to play a supporting role. I will know when I start the book how we're starting, how we're ending, and about 3 or 4 of the main points along the way. I'm an organized pantser.
Yeah. So does it change for you? Because I think that a lot of organized pantsers say that there's then as that sort of organically evolves, all of a sudden you're like, oh, that point is not quite going to work, or
Mhm.
does the ending ever change, or just now that you sort of know what you're doing, you're pretty good at holding those bookmarks or the bookends.
So when I turned in book number 9, A Grave Robbery, I turned it into my editor on a Friday. And by Saturday evening, I sent her an email which said, hey, when you get this Monday morning, can I have the book back? Because the murderer is wrong and I need to rewrite the last 2/3 of the book.
Oh, wow.
And
Two
to
thirds.
her everlasting credit, she said, I can give you 6 weeks. Don't tell me what just do it. I trust you. And 6 weeks later, I gave her the book back and it had like 2/3 of it was completely different because I realized I had gotten the murderer wrong. The book worked. It
Yeah.
was fine, but it was fine.
Yeah. And it was
And it wasn't until I turned it in that I was like, oh, crap. The problem that I find with my process and the thing that drives me absolutely bananas is that I don't make my best decisions. Things do not really click until I'm under pressure.
Oh, wow.
If I have too much time, I overthink. I go down too many little, gopher holes trying to figure out, oh, what if I did? Oh, here's a side quest. Let me go explore this. And I don't make quick. If I'm under pressure, I make fast, good decisions. And I
Interesting.
follow my intuition, and it works really, really well. The project I'm working on right now, I had to world build completely. It's a new contemporary. It's a thriller featuring a jewel thief. And so it was brand new characters, brand new setting, everything. I've had months to work on it. Months. And I kept restarting it. Because I knew that there was a foundational error, but I couldn't figure out what it was. And I kept
Interesting.
restarting the book. And because until I got the first 100 pages nailed
Right.
down,
Right. Right.
I couldn't go anywhere.
I agree
And
with that.
so I finally emailed my editor and I said, look, here's where we're at. I've restarted it 3 times. I'm on my 4th go now, but I know what I'm doing. I know what the error was and I fixed it. And so then she and I had a confab and she was like, yeah, you totally fixed it. She said, yeah, this is working. This is exactly what it should have been all along. And I was like, yeah, wish I'd known that 3 months ago.
Right.
But past me did not. Past me was like, oh, this is probably fine. It was fine.
Yeah.
It was
So,
fine.
I mean, so it's interesting, like, is your reaction to those moments now, do you panic? Do you realize, are you good? Are you at the point where
Not
you're like,
anymore.
okay, yeah, that's what I was going to ask, right?
I used to earlier on in my career when I didn't realize, and beautifully, luckily, wonderfully, my editor said, dude, this is your process. I trust your process. This is you. And, she gets that if another writer were doing this to her, that might be catastrophic because that's not their process. That means something is very wrong. She understands that for me, this is just where we're at. I don't miss deadlines. I'm fanatical about making my deadlines, but I will call her and say, look, I know there's flexibility on this deadline.
Yeah.
What is our absolute drop dead date? I remember when I was writing Killers of a Certain Age, because that was the first contemporary I'd ever written. It was the first time I had had to world build in a very long time because I think at that point I'd written like 5 or 6 Veronica Speedwell books. So
Yeah.
I was like right in that Victorian world and I could not get the voice down. I just couldn't get the voice down. And it took me ages to do that. I restarted that book about 4 or 5 times, finally got the voice down. But as I was getting closer and closer to the deadline, I had these flashback scenes that I had written separately, and I did not know how to integrate them into the main narrative, had no idea how to do it. And it wasn't until 96 hours before the book was due. And I'm talking like drop dead, dude, we're going into production type of due, that I figured out where they had to go. And so for that 96 hours, and I do not recommend this,
I was gonna
it
say.
was write, fall into bed, get something to eat, write. I mean, and I did that. I didn't change out of my pajamas. I didn't I was feral. And it was horrible and wonderful. And at 5 p.m. that Friday, I turned the book in and I was like, and my editor, Monday morning, this was a different editor who also understood this was my process. Thank God. Called me Monday morning, was like, no, you got it. It's exactly where it needs to be. That was the only place those scenes could have gone. And I'm like, why didn't I see that
Yes,
before?
yeah. But
That's my process.
But yeah, and you can't trust, you have to trust it, right? I mean, at this
Uh-huh.
point now, you've done
Yeah.
it enough times. You know this is your process. So you are taking, so does it work for you? Are you've done now 2 contemporaries in between
Mhm.
the Veronica Speedwell, and that sounds like you got a third one.
Yeah.
Is it, are you doing every other? Does it depend? Is it about what idea you have next, or are they 2 different publishers? I guess I don't know how you got it set
It's
up.
the same publisher, but it's 2 different contracts.
Okay.
And so we will about once a year I go up to New York and we have a little confab. My agent will be there, my editor's there, my editor's boss is there, so we have the editorial director in the room and we'll sit down and discuss, okay, what do we think should be next?
Okay.
And how are we going to roll this out? And we will map out about the next 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
And then the next year I'll come back and we'll see if we need to move anything around. We'll see if we need to make some changes or additions or, because like doing Kills Well with Others was not something we initially expected to do, but Killers of a Certain Age had done so well that it was like, oh, we should probably revisit these characters. So we had to, okay, where do we fit that in?
Yeah.
And then, this last time I was there, I was having a meeting with my editor, and we always like to have fun meetings. So we'll go out for we were having tea actually. And I started mapping out. I accidentally pitched her 3 books while we were sitting there. I was like, I was thinking, what if I did? And she was like, okay, I would love that. Yes, let's put that in here. So we're already having discussions about I'm mapped out through like 2030 at this point,
Oh my
2031.
God.
I know what I'm writing and I know what order they're probably going to be in. So what we're doing now is we're taking more gaps between the Veronica books
Mhm.
because the understanding is, by the time you've got 9 or 10 books under your belt with a series, those readers are always going to come back and say,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, we get a chance to visit with these characters again. And your contemporaries, your standalones, those are the things that you have to be a little bit more thoughtful about where you bring them out and when you bring them out. So like the one I'm writing right now is going to come out in September of 27, which usually my release month is March. So we'll have a little bit longer of a gap, but then we're going to have a very short gap to the next Veronica,
Yeah.
which will be out the following March. So, we play around a little bit, and it depends on what they want. It depends on what I want to do. But the more I work contemporary, the more ideas I'm getting. And I have managed to, the contemporary I'm writing right now, actually, in a weird way, links all of my worlds together. In the same way that A Ghastly Catastrophe linked my two Victorian series together, because I had written the Lady Julia Gray series at the very beginning of my career. It was 5 books and 4 novellas with a previous publisher. So I had to change Victorian heroines when I moved to a new
Sure.
publisher, and those books kind of, went by the wayside. But readers still to this day, are we getting another Julia book?
Yeah.
And I have to tell them, I'm so sorry. I can't.
Right. Right.
But I do own the characters. So
Mhm.
I could put them in to a Veronica book. And we thought, wouldn't it be great fun to do that for book 10? To kind of have these characters cross paths. So Julia Gray and her husband are in this book, and they're
That's
providing some clues for Veronica and Stoker
oh,
and having a
great.
little adventure
The
together.
Brisbanes.
Yes.
That's
Yes, yes,
so fun
yes.
because they are so fascinating, and I did not know where they had come from.
They
But
had an entire series of their
I
own.
love that. I really love it, and I can see with the appeal of that character. Well, the other fun, super fun thing about this is that I did feel like 100% this book stood alone. I didn't feel like I was like, wait,
Oh,
where am I
good.
in the world? No,
Good.
but
I try to do that so
yeah,
hard.
no, and I think that's really important because people are still, I imagine, discovering this series right
Mhm.
now in, at book 10. And now it's like you just think, oh my God, now I've got 9 more of these to go back and enjoy because what a fun world. So I think that's always an incredible thing about finding a series that, especially a series that does this, which I think is a hard balance to find to find the way to make it feel like a standalone, even though you're immersed in an existing world.
Well, I work really, really hard to make sure that we don't have spoilers
Yeah,
for previous books.
yeah,
Because each book is a self-contained mystery. Whatever happens within that book stays within that book. What overarches through the whole series are the interpersonal
yeah,
relationships. So those are the only spoilers that you may run into is, oh, at some point somebody spent time with this character. But as far as who done it, the
yeah.
mysteries do not get spoiled. As far as I'm able, and I work really, really hard to keep the spoilers out of it because I mean, I want readers. I personally almost always start a series with the first book as a reader. But a
Yeah,
lot of folks don't. A lot of folks are like, oh, you know what? This book is about, this particular topic, and I'm fascinated in that. So I want to start with this book. Great. Like
right.
my third book is in the series, it has an Egyptological theme. And people who are Amelia Peabody fans, like that's a great book to start with because of the fact that you've got mummies and curses and all kinds of fun stuff in that book, and that's a great entry point for somebody who is maybe missing Amelia Peabody. That's a great kind of read alike for them, and you don't want to have to necessarily go in and read the first couple of books to make sure you understand where you're coming
Right.
in.
And I think if you think about the way that we get to know even people, right? Friends, for instance, you know them in the present, and then you
Mhm.
learn about things in their past because as you get to know somebody really well, you hear a story about what happened when, their kids were little or when they were, teenagers or whatever. So it's to sort of feel like you're not knowing that whole history in the minute also feels to me very natural with the way we
That's a
actually know people.
beautiful observation. Yeah, that's gorgeous. That's exactly, you're so right, So yeah, I like the idea that people can just pick up wherever they're interested and
Yeah.
then go back and fill in and read the books that intrigue you and don't read the books you don't want to, and you're fine. Like you're
And
fine.
I can't imagine really like now having met these characters, I can't imagine that every book isn't just like so much fun because the characters are so much fun. And I think for me personally, and clearly for you as well, it's the characters that make a
Yeah.
story. It's obviously, I mean, the detail in the Victorian era, and I'm not necessarily a big historical
Mm.
fiction reader, but when I am in a book that is where the characters, drive the story, and the setting is like a character in itself, it's so much fun. So what a great,
You know, and that to me is I think that is one of the biggest roadblocks for folks in reading historical fiction is you're worried you're not going to have fun. And the for me the idea was, look, I've read a lot of Victorian memoirs and journals, and they were just like us. They loved a good
yeah.
joke. They loved a dick joke. They weren't necessarily telling them, over the tea table when the vicar's in the room, but they loved a saucy joke.
Uh,
They've always been just like us. And there are two ways to approach history. You either look for the differences or you look for the similarities. And I always look for the similarities just because I think that humanizes people throughout history. That shows us where the connection is. And the past is not as much in the past as we
right.
think it is.
Right.
They wrestled with the same things that we wrestle with. If you look at Victorian London, there was a tent city in Trafalgar Square with a whole bunch of immigrants in it because the question was, oh my God, what do we do with immigrants?
Yeah.
Well, guess what Britons are wrestling with right now?
Yeah.
What do
Yeah.
we do with immigrants?
Right.
What do we do? What do we do with the idea that a woman should be in control of her own body?
Right.
That's
Right.
something,
It
that's
hasn't
something
changed. Right. It's the same conversation.
no.
Exactly.
Oh, we how do we feel about people who love people of the same gender? How do we feel about things that are gender bending identity? Because those were things that existed.
Yeah,
Those
I
were
love it.
questions that came up. How do we take care of each other? Do we want to take care of each other? Yes, we should. But how do we do
Right.
that?
Right.
And they're all the same questions. The trappings may be slightly different. But when you realize Victorians had escalators and vegetarianism and lesbians, you realize
Right.
it's the past is not that
No,
different.
right.
It's
That's
not that
exactly right.
different.
And and the power, the seeking power, the greed.
Mhm.
It's yeah, so much of it is the same. And
It's
it
exactly the same.
yeah, and it was Deanna, this was so much fun. And I have to say, I had such a great time. And everyone, you got to go check out Veronica Speedwell, whether you read the first one, or number 10. God, I just had such a great time. And we will be giving away a copy of A Ghastly Catastrophe, either on our Facebook page, Danielle's Killer Women, or on Killer Women Podcast on Instagram. So look for that to come out. I can't wait to see what you're going to do with your next contemporary novel. What a joy. Deanna, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun.
So much fun. I could talk to you all day. Everyone, this was Killer Women with Deanna Raybourn, and we will see you next time. Bye.